So, John, how does it feel to be in Ibiza?
At dawn, you mean? Early morning. Sorry about that. I'm not, for nothing to get this session as early as it is. It's like the end of the night in Ibiza at 11 o'clock.
Those dark shades aren't because of a night out, I hope.
I see what you mean.
Interestingly, we took Jean-Michel Jarre up to Dolk Villa last night to see Fatboy Slim perform. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site up there. We're very, very proud to be using it. You've actually been an ambassador for UNESCO for some time.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell us a bit about your work that you've been doing for them?
Actually, I've been asked to become a UN ambassador through UNESCO, I don't know, almost 20 years ago now. And I really appreciated that these people, I mean, trying to, in days where everybody, I mean, big companies or politicians are trapped into short-term basis and short-term vision, to meet with people able to think about our future and having a vision for the future and future generations in a very genuine and generous way. So I've been really interested to try to contribute as much as I can to help not only the World Heritage stuff, but also everything linked to education, environment, culture and music as a key for sustainable development and so on and so forth. So and actually I supported for quite a while backstage, I would say, that this kind of event could, like yesterday, I mean, could happen in World Heritage sites to try to create a link between music, electronic music basically, and World Heritage or whatever outdoor events. You know how much I've been involved in outdoor concerts, and the link between architecture and music for me is always part of my DNA, if I can say so.
Well, I mean, going back, obviously, you know, when people talk about DJs playing big performances in front of, you know, 100,000 people on certain beaches around the world, you've been doing this for 25, 30 years, going to the most challenging of places, taking electronic music in front of millions and millions of people. Tell us a little bit about how some of those shows have come about. You know, things like the Docklands and in Moscow where you played to 3.5 million people. How do these gigs come about and who funded these gigs?
Actually, everything started when I've been involved in electronic music at a very early stage. When I was a student, I was very involved in and interested by opera as an art form, and wondering why these great composers of classical music were, I mean, at one stage wanted to work with carpenters and visual artists and scenographs to try to enhance the performance of their music. And obviously, electronic music, as we know, is difficult to or has specific problems to be performed on stage, because it's not the most exciting thing to stay 2 hours behind your laptop. And then I just thought to use the tools of my generation in video and electronics and lasers and lights to also give something more than just the performance made by only the performer, when the performance is in electronic music part of a kind of multimedia concept. So I did those, I started a kind of a new genre, a new style, without even realizing it, by also hijacking some public spaces in days where also you didn't have so many indoor spaces or places, areas to play electronic music. You had either clubs or classical theater, traditional theater, where you could make plays and things like that. But you also, and on the other side, you have this kind of arena made for basketball on Monday and political parties or advertising company or seminars or forums on Tuesday, and then you are playing on Wednesday in a place where you didn't have so many good musical vibes. So I really thought that electronic music was also linked with space. And then it came like this. It came along with this idea, and and then because of that, I've been proposed by different countries to set up some concerts, outdoor events, and it's really came along as a kind of art form, became then quite popular. Even it's interesting because when I started this process, I mean, it was in days, I would say, apart from Pink Floyd, where the rock performance even were not that interested, or they were not involving so many visual scenography and things. And I think that had probably also an influence on also the way these days, I mean, rock music is performed these days. If you see the big rock acts, I mean, having lots of scenography and all that. And in a way, I think at that stage, electronic music even had an influence on the rest of the big rock performance industry.
In that time, though, who was inspiring you? What was making you think so big about electronic music? You know, you were so ambitious with this sound, and there were no limits to where you could take this music. What was sort of driving you?
Actually, it was really starting with the idea that when I started electronic music, you had absolutely no structure, we were more basically stealing some oscillators and electronic equipment from laboratories or from radio stations, because it was really in days where even synthesizers were in Europe not that popular. It was very expensive, and then we had to do things basically with very, very minimalist and small equipment. And I had the opportunity to study actually electronic and electroacoustic music with one man who, in my opinion, responsible for our presence here is Pierre Schaeffer, the creator, inventor of musique concrète, electroacoustic music. In days where he's been the first guy to think music in terms of sounds and not in terms of solfeggio or harmony or traditional approach of music. And that's really changed my life. I had a classical training, and also I used to play in some rock bands. And suddenly I rediscovered that you could make music like you do paintings and graphics, man. I mean, with a total different approach, and also a kind of innocent and genuine approach, which actually changed the world of music. I mean, electronic music is not a genre only in itself, but it's a new way of composing, producing, distributing music as we know today.
I mean, people who are today producing electronic music, DJs, live performers, everyone within this business, it's in their mind that they feel like they're innovating. It's part of the beauty of technology-based music. You always feel you're progressing. Were you very much thinking at the time you were a visionary, that you were really pushing music forwards in a big way, or were you just in the moment and not really aware of that?
What do you mean by that?
Were you aware at the time that you were innovating in such a big way? Kraftwerk were around at this point.
You're never aware, I think, of the fact that at one time in your life, by coincidence, by chance, you're just at the beginning of something, which is a great privilege, because it's a great privilege to open doors on virgin territories where you had nothing behind. I mean, now I figure that a young beginner today is already an old man if you consider what he has behind him. I mean, by 40 years of big achievements and great achievements in rock, pop, rap, hip hop, electronic. I mean, and also with the web. I mean, you get in the morning with a fresh idea, and by lunchtime, this idea is all over the world and has been discussed, digested before sunset. So it's something that obviously it's a total new challenge and new approach of creativity. But I would like to say that actually for a long time, I mean, and I know that because by discussing with lots of people involved in electronic music these days, that people could have some complex by thinking that electronic music is not real music, because it's not done by real instruments. It's not. And I think it's a very wrong approach to music. I think music is not linked to to the technology, to the link to the instruments. The technology, yes, but to the instruments, or the fact that it should be in studio with in the traditional way, to be perform and play with the noble instruments, where you would have less noble instruments belonging to electronic music. I think the feeling or the lack of feeling of music is not, and any art form is not depending on the instrument you use, but the idea, the feeling, the emotions you want to convey.
I think being told that electronic music isn't real music is something that's united everybody in this room. I think at some point all of us have been told that this isn't real music, you know, computer-based music isn't real music, and we've now reached this point where electronic dance music is the biggest genre in the world. How do you feel? I mean, for me, the reason I've got you here to IMS is because I feel you've been slightly forgotten by the new generation. People are not aware of the important work that you did. How do you feel about that in today's world? Where do you feel you fit today?
Actually, you know, I mean, it's I learned by being the first Western musician playing in China that everything is a matter of time. That doesn't care, because I mean, you know, it's like a balance. I mean, and then you have cycles. I mean, it's everything growing so fast that it's not that important that for a while people are focused on their style. We can, when dance music started in the 80s, late 80s, I would say, on the most popular way. I immediately thought that it was a very good sign for the genre, but also that at one stage, electronic music, everybody will realize that electronic music is much broader and wider than just music for dance floor. Yeah. And when I started electronic music for me was not necessarily linked to a dance genre or a dance floor genre, and we can all see these days how many people really having started in dance floor music wants to widen the genre and to widen the genre and to try to also be involved in other things, soundtracks and music for the web or for theater or whatever. And this is a way that I think that we have lots of things to share in the future, I suppose.
But do you feel, I mean, Kraftwerk kind of get all of the respect, right? Everybody references Kraftwerk. Do you sort of feel that you don't get a similar level of that respect? Because I think to us you've done as much as they did to push electronic music forward.
I don't have that feeling. I would be quite silly not having, I mean, sold the kind of albums I sold, and also having the kind of following I have all over the world, to think these days. I think we started more or less at the same time, and immediately Kraftwerk went into this kind of pre-dance floor format, where I went. I'm coming more from the classical training and the world, where Kraftwerk, in a rather German way, made a kind of apology of machines. I always considered synthesizers and electronic music as in a more impressionistic way, yeah. Which I think is now the time to realize that electronic music is not only just kind of music made by fake instruments and fake composers. But actually, and that is exactly what I've always been convinced by. So I think I really consider that I've done lots of demos in my life, and that it's maybe a dream, but that what I have to do is ahead of me, in a sense, yeah. In a strange way.
When did you last count how many albums you've sold?
Never. I've never been that obsessed and interested by breaking records, even if I've been by chance or coincidence a few times in the Guinness Book of Records.
You've broken more records than any music artist, from what I can work out. I mean, 4 times you've broken the records for the highest amount of people at a concert. you know, not many people have achieved that kind of stuff. I've actually got a video that I'd love to show people here of Jean-Michel Jarre. Can we cue the video here? I just would like to, people who maybe don't know quite the scale of what Jean-Michel Jarre was doing 25 plus years ago. Well,
I didn't watch this film for quite a while.
how does it make you feel looking at that?
It's a good example of what you can achieve with like visual technology and linking architecture with music and actually what, in our opinion, electronic music should convey as, using technology for creating emotions partly in days where you are behind your laptop thinking that you're connected to the world, but more and more isolated in a sense. And there is nothing more, and we could have this experience even yesterday night by, sharing the same moment all together physically. Feeling bodies of friends and crowd around you. It's something, and also the idea of the one-off. What I think is very specific to electronic music is the idea of the one-off, that you have no second chance, that you're not going to be there the following Saturday or the following day to get exactly the same thing. Everything is special. I think electronic music is almost close to the circus concept in a noble sense of the word. The idea that you are like an acrobat, and every day and every night it's something different.
Yeah. I chose that particular video because I think one of the challenges facing electronic music today is, and I'm not sure how much you are aware of this, but we're in an era where the big artists, the Deadmau5, Swedish House Mafia, Plastic Man, Skrillex, all of these artists are, in a way, kind of taking influence from what you were doing back then. But we've reached a scenario where everybody's just trying to put the biggest LED show they possibly can on a stage, and a lot of the creativity is being forgotten. People are just spending money to make their show look as big as possible without really thinking about the creativity within it. How do you feel about what these guys are up to today?
Actually, I think that what is important after all in any kind of art form is the content. It's not the tools, is to try, whatever the size of the production, whatever the money you have or the money you don't have, which is very important, is the content. And I think that what's great in electronic music, the music itself is like 3D without glasses. The music itself, you can close your eyes, and then if you open it, you have to give something that is in sync, not only with the beat, but with the emotion of what you try to express. And I think it's very important. I think that the visual of electronic music, I would consider it today as a kind of anti-MTV type of concept, where let's try to forget any kind of try to tell a story, but also avoiding to be too gimmicky and just having images on the beat. I mean, sometimes it's very nice to create a counterpoint, a contrast, when you have a really, for instance, violent beat, to have slow-mo visuals. I mean, exactly like when you're doing an arrangement in music, and where you can have a very speedy kind of part, and behind and energetic, and behind you have more melancholic or slow movements. It should be exactly the same in the visuals, in the way you articulate and you conceive your visuals. It's not just in my opinion, a performance in electronic music. Visuals are not just a kind of background. It's not a visual track of the music like a soundtrack. The music would be a soundtrack for a film. Yeah. It has to be conceived at the same time.
Have you been to see any of these contemporary artists performing live? Is there anybody that's really inspired you?
I'm quite, as you know, I'm quite close to the contemporary scene, and I think that you have lots of people very creative, and I think that Amos Tobin, for instance, was interesting by using kind of mapping technique on stage for indoor concerts. I think that also Etienne de Crécy also, quite interesting with, just traveling in the world with just 2 small suitcases and having kind of Lego type of concept is also something interesting. And it proves that also, but you have you have so many creative artists, and the problem is not to try to find the tools today, is to dig in yourself, deep in yourself, to try to find out what you want to express to people. And that's the beginning of it, in my opinion.
Did your ideas ever get out of control? Did you come up with ideas that you look back and go, well, I wish I'd never done something that crazy on a stage?
Yeah, it's always the same story when suddenly you have a kind of worldwide success. Suddenly everything is going crazy, and you don't know even what's going on. I mean, for some artists, we had the privilege to get that kind of audience and feedback from the audience. Suddenly you are losing control. The team around you is losing control. But also it's nice because then you can do crazy things at the same time. And then it's time after a while, if you want to last in your, not only your career, but as an artist, is also to take this experience and trying to also share with people. I think that what is lacking today, and partly in the not the electronic music, but in general, is the idea of sharing. Sharing is not only sharing the fact that you clean your teeth in the morning on Facebook. It's really the idea that more you give, more you receive, and it takes time in life to understand that. And I think that it's a sharing process. And we were talking last night with my friend Pino Saliocco, the idea of also, trying after a while the kind of legacy process where you can also share your experience and share your energy with other artists. And I think what's great in electronic music these days, it's probably the last movement, still, even if it was one of the most popular style of music in the world, it still has that kind of underground flavor, like jazz used to be in the old days. Where the family of electronic music is quite remote from the public eye, in a sense. And it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because now it's time for electronic music to be recognized as a genre like classical music, jazz, rock, or whatever, but also at the same time, it's also a very good shelter. It's a protection for keeping the innocence and desire virgin and dedicated to ultimate energy, I would say.
And in terms of the ideas of the shows that you did, I mean, how much of it was you? You know, when you look at that performance there, you know, the stage show, the concepts, how much of it is you driving the creativity or versus the team around you?
You know, I actually, when I was a student, I really hesitated between painting and music, and I've always been very involved in visual arts and visual expressions, and so I always design more or less everything on my own, obviously with a team of very talented people, but I've always been at the beginning of the concept and the visual ideas.
And it took you, only very recently you did your first indoor tour, is that correct? Where you went into arenas for almost the first time?
No, I did it before, but that was, I mean, the past, yes, 3-4 years ago, I decided to play one of my early album, Oxygen, as a piece in itself, and to do something that I think I've never done before, and I think no one did before, was to go on stage without any computers, without being 100% live, like a jazz quartet or classical quatuor with Moogs and 50 analog instruments on stage, and we were just 4 of us, and playing everything live, improvising with all the accidents who may occur, as everybody knows in this room, with analog stuff. But then in days where people are scared about not being perfect, not being correct and all that, I mean, all kinds of accidents in those kind of events, what may occur, create an instant emotional link with the audience. The fact that you can be wrong, the fact like everybody does in your day-to-day life, you can make mistakes and all that, sharing this kind of process of electronic music being like cooking in your kitchen and showing maybe not everything from what's going on backstage, but I mean sharing the experience of making music live, which is important, I think, in any kind of art forms. I don't agree with some people saying at the moment in the world of electronic music, saying that, you know, that would be 2 genres of electronic music. I mean, kind of fake music would be done through computers, and some others that would be the real music done with real musicians in studios. I think this is, in a sense, this is wrong. I think there is no whatever the instruments you're doing. In painting, you can do painting with a toothbrush or with a digital plugin. The most important thing is the result by the end of the day, and nothing else.
You did say that it's not the music. It's not the music that's electronic. It's the instruments. Do you remember that quote? Mm-hmm. Do you want to just express a bit about that?
Actually, I mean, music is like any kind of art form. Is, in a sense, as I said before, depending on technology. We shouldn't forget that, for instance, if Elvis Presley was doing songs of 3 minutes, because in those days you had 78s, you could cut only 3 minutes on a record, and then it created the genre of a single, a song of 3 minutes, because you could only play this on jukeboxes, and then it became a format on radio stations. When long playing and vinyl, the big vinyl happened, you had artists such as Pink Floyd or myself or whatever, I mean, able to conceive 20 minutes piece of music, and now with files you can do whatever you want. So in a sense, it's depending on technology, but in the other sense, the other way, on the other hand, it's, I mean, electronic music is not, and actually in a sense, Kraftwerk or some German artists of my generation, created this kind of confusion that it's not the human being responsible for the music, but machines. Right. I remember even some bands in Germany at one stage were actually leaving sequencers, just turning and leaving the stage, making a statement that actually music was made by a machine, a kind of Terminator type of concept based on music. And it's, I feel obviously the opposite. It's actually the guy behind the machine who does it.
Man and the machine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How does, I mean, without going too much into Daft Punk, because I think everybody's bored of hearing about it, but what is your take on what they're doing with electronic music?
Actually, I think it's a very interesting situation that probably their most successful records to be, apparently, is not no more that electronic. It's a more kind of traditional way of producing, marketing, and doing an album that could have been released in the 70s as a kind of disco type of very cleverly conceived. But it's not per se a pure electronic music anymore, which is not bad, or this is something else. But I think that it would be a mistake to, as I said, to try to create an opposition between what could be real music made by great musicians as Nile Rodgers, and doing things live in studios, and doing music with plugins and computers in your home studio. I mean, actually, Daft Punk and one of the best albums, the first one, has been done in that way, and I don't think that it would be this one should be better than the first one, for instance. So again, I think it's not. We are not. By the end of the day, we are not interested by how a music, a film, a painting, a book has been made. How much sweat and blood and whatever has been involved in the process. We are just interested by the result, and then we may be interested as because we are curious to know how it has been done. But I've always been quite cautious about, for instance, in DVDs when you watch a movie you like and knowing how it has been done. It's like a magician. You don't want to know where the trick is. You know, I remember that I've been really disappointed when I saw the making of Matrix, because it was so great, and suddenly when you see these actors with stripes and links all over the place, it kills the magic. And I think you should keep the mystery a little bit.
How does one thing that really surprised me was film music with you, and your father was a very well-known film composer, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about his career and what?
Yes, my father, Maurice Jarre, has done brilliant soundtracks such as Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia and so many more. And in a sense, I always considered that soundtracks were my father's territory, and I refused so many soundtracks in my life that today I regret. A lot actually that Giorgio did, actually.
Any in particular? Which films do you wish you'd done?
I mean, films that have been proposed, such as Midnight Express and American Gigolo and Cat People. I mean, the one I was saying that Giorgio did most of them. And
you refused that because of your father?
Yeah, unconsciously I was saying, okay, I'm in my genre and involved in my career as a recording artist and doing performances, and I said, okay, we should leave things to also the rest of the family and sharing. I mean, and I think it was a mistake. These days I'm not regretting it, but I'm more than ever interested, and I would like in the future being more involved in the film industry and soundtracks. Not just because my dad passed away, obviously, but it's now something that I would like, because I think that these days electronic music, as we know, can contribute a lot to soundtracks. It's interesting by saying that electronic music has always been linked to science fiction, and that you have very few science fiction movies using electronic music. Apart from Blade Runner with Vangelis or some others, most of the time you have exactly the reverse, having the big John Williams type of hyper Mussorgsky type of genre of music, who actually, in my opinion, is as a guy involved in electronic music has been frustrating in a sense. And I think now you have step-by-step people like Cliff Martinez and people such as Trent Reznor, obviously. I mean, showing that you can build soundtracks more, not only with the symphonic orchestra. I like that, but I think partly in kind of new genre of cinema, you can also experiment a little more. And I would be interested to contribute to this in the future.
You talk earlier about, you came at electronic music not from the dance floor, okay? You came from a different perspective to a lot of people in this room, potentially. Were you ever a clubber? Did you ever go clubbing in Paris? Was nightlife a big part of your formative years?
Yes, I mean, on and off. I mean, it's always been part of my life as music is something that you do anyway at night time. So the nightlife is part of your day-to-day life, if I could say so. But yeah, I mean, I always been convinced that the electronic music has been really exposed to the wide audience through dance floor. That actually, at one stage, we'll all realize that dance floor is a niche, even if it's a wide one. You're not in clubs to actually listen to music. You're more there to plug your body to a plug and to feel the beat and the sound through your body. And actually, it's something that we know that is not enough on a day-to-day basis. You want to experiment also not only. Music where you could make your body move, but also the inside also. I mean, maybe make dancing your heart, your brain, and not only your body. And this is what music is all about. And I discussed with so many DJs. I mean, just having started in one dance floor kind of music, and suddenly thinking that. Now they could compose their own and write their own tracks, and this is almost a different job. It's something else. You have, as we know, brilliant DJs that are not that good as producers or composers, or the reverse. It's two different styles. But these days, electronic music is not only a genre, and I've always been convinced of that when I started as rap music or rock, but actually a new way of writing music. Conceiving how you can deal with sounds. I mean, what really changed in the 20th century for Western music is the fact that we integrated in music Africa and electricity. Africa for the beat and electricity with technology and how to record music. Because before that, you didn't have that, and that changed the way we even think music. And actually, today. The great thing, I've been impressed when I started electronic music, was for the first time I was able to, as I said, to do music like you cook, by mixing ingredients and textures and colors. And it was not really possible before, because you suddenly, with electronic music, as we know here in this room, we can choose and select and create our own colors. We are the craftsmen of the instruments we use. When you study classical music, for instance, or even rock, you have the sound of a violin, a trumpet, an organ, or whatever, and you mix all this together. Now we can with electronic music, I mean, really creating our own textures and sounds, and that is something totally different. It's a different way even of approaching things. It's like, I would say, abstract painting towards to classical and traditional figurative painting, where you are more involved in textures, in colors, in perspective, in geometry, and trying to feel it, to express emotions with that than anything else.
Are there any DJs that particularly inspired you over the last 25 years? Living in France and Paris, there's a huge legacy of great French artists that have come from your country.
I mean, French or international. I mean, we're talking with Norman Cook, with Fatboy Slim. I mean, yesterday he's not only a brilliant DJ. I think he should produce more new music, because I've been really so impressed by all the the music is done in the 90s, and Chemical Brothers, obviously, and Underworld, all these kind of people who really been the first guys coming from the dance floor and really producing interesting music apart from the dance floor situation. And obviously you have people like in France, like Justice, like Sébastien Tellier, like Daft Punk, obviously, and Air. And it's interesting to see actually how much these days, and for quite a while, and electronic music is wider than just the dance floor genre. If you take, I don't know, people such as Massive Attack, Air, was talking about Cliff Martinez or myself, I mean, it's music we are doing not only for a specific situation. And this is, I think, what's great with, I mean, electronic music is also something coming, in my opinion, from Europe. I mean, until for quite a while, we've been invaded in Europe by American ethnic music, which is blues and rock, basically. And suddenly, because we are in Europe, coming from the classical tradition of music, electronic music is actually coming from classical music. I mean, able to conceive long form. I mean, tracks could last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and instrumental music without necessarily linked to lyrics. And that is something that comes from Europe, really. And I think that it has been, and now mixing both, taking a bit of this, a bit of that, is actually the tendency of these days. I think what's interesting when I started music is actually we all started fresh, as I said before. I mean, rock, pop after the 60s. I mean, everything was new, and then everything could do exciting things, full of innocence, with no knowledge, with no consciousness of what we were doing, and then creating very interesting things in our respective domain and sectors. And now, which is interesting, that we have the luxury to take a bit of this, a bit of that, and mixing all styles together, what electronic music is able to do.
But people in classical music are very protective and very defensive about the purity of classical music. Did you get much resistance when you started merging electronic music with classical music? Did you get much stick from the purists?
Yeah, I mean, like generation after generation, you have I mean, like some DJs, even or established DJs today, have a kind of contemptuous attitude to beginners. I mean, it's unfortunately not linked to a style or a particular period. It's sometimes linked to the human being wrong attitude sometimes. But I remember that I introduced electronic music at the Paris Opera when in my 20s, and it was a real fight with the symphonic orchestra of the opera, because they thought that because of having speakers on stage, they would lose their job. And they were constantly unplugging the PA system to create troubles and things. And then after a while, it got better, because I wrote a kind of piece linked with symphonic orchestra mixed with electronic music. So they said, okay, we still have a hope. Cooperate. So I mean, yeah, I mean, we all know this. I mean, period after period. I mean, you always have to fight against the generation before.
Okay. Talking about technology, you have a company, Jarre Technologies, correct? You've been very innovative in this space. Could you tell people a little bit about some of the stuff you've been creating, and the Aerodream one particularly?
Actually, it's my partner became a friend since one guy came to see me a few years ago and asking me if I would be interested to contribute to create audio products and things linked to hi-fi and all that. And as a musician, as an artist, I've been really instantly very interested by that. Actually, first of all, in my own blood, in my family. I mean, my father, as we said, used to be a composer, but my grandfather was an engineer, and he actually created one of the first portable turntable, the grandfather of iPhone, right, where you can carry with turntable and for playing vinyls with batteries on the beach. And then that obviously is something that part of my DNA. And I've been also interested by the fact that, you know, a few years ago, hi-fi system was actually the central piece of your living room. When you were moving in a new flat, you would put your hi-fi system before putting curtains and carpets. And step by step, we forgot that. More the music became nomadic, less we pay attention, even as musicians, to the way people are listening to music. And sometimes it's ending with two poor plastic speakers on each side of your laptop. And then it's a reason why probably people like to go to dance floor, like to go to a concert, because it's the only way to actually going back to the organic, the physical experience, what an audio and sounds creates to your body. And this is something that I think is very important, partly in our genre of music, of electronic music, where the way music is reproduced is so important. And it's not only through headphones, it's also a matter of sharing, again, the musical experience with friends at your place and all that. So we started to think about how we could contribute to design the sound system of the future, and where I'm actually convinced that there is a big future for us as thinking about how the music you're doing and we are doing is going to be perceived and received by people. And it's something that we should be influenced by the film industry. Because when you see, for instance, in our work, we are spending hours in studios, hours for mixing, for mastering, and at the door of the mixing studio, our involvement stops suddenly. And we are not involved with what's going on after that. And I think it's a big, big mistake, where if you think that directors such as, I don't know, David Lynch or the guy who did Drive or Stanley Kubrick, I mean, they are so obsessed that sometimes they're asking to the distributor to even repaint in the theaters where their movies are going to be filmed, if they have that power. But for that kind of guys, it's possible. And it's just an example to see how much people in the film industry are very absolutely obsessive on the way their creation is going to be received and projected technically. In a way, where in the music industry, and I think it's one of the reasons of the crisis of the music industry, is actually we've been really naive about how the fact that more the technology is evolving, more we have sophisticated tools in studios, less we pay attention of the way music is going to be received. I mean, we started with vinyl. And vinyl was, as we know, the grail for listening to music. Then we went to CD. It was worse than vinyl. And then we went to MP3. It was worse than CD. And at the same time, our tools in studios really evolved. I mean, the quality of the music you can produce in studio these days is absolutely far, far better than what you could have achieved even 25 years ago, at last, because now digital at last is, I would say, you could achieve better sound than analog, but it took time. For a long time, analog stuff was better.
You spend a lot of time helping preserve, the genre and protecting the genre of music that you're into. He's very active in a lot of political organisations. We've asked you to join the Association for Electronic Music. You're very passionate about protecting fellow writers and creators of music. Tell us a bit about your feelings on that.
I'm not particularly going into a crusade or whatever, but I mean through life, and I met some people. They asked me if I would be, would agree to be involved in those issues of intellectual property and facing new technology, new media, and so on and so forth. I think it's quite normal, in my opinion, and that. As I said, if you receive a lot, you have also to give back at one stage. And I think these days, I mean, the idea of, and partly in the world of electronic music being so fragile and vulnerable in terms of how to survive with what we do and what you do. It's very important to think that, for instance, if you get a smartphone of $500, and if you from this smartphone, if you take away visual, the music we are doing, and cinema and news and all that, you just have a poor telephone that has not a value more than $50 or 100, let's say. And what about the rest? And when the same people, these big monsters, big companies are telling you, authors' rights, intellectual property is nothing, when you have Apple and Samsung are getting, hundreds of lawyers against each other to try to protect their own, what they think that is their own creation and their own patents. It's almost disgusting to think that artists being involved in the success of those companies are not getting even 1 cent of it. So it's something that has to be balanced. But to balance this, I think those companies grew so fast that they didn't even realize the kind of collateral damages they created. And I think that it's time now to try to consider that the idea of intellectual property is not a kind of passéist or retro concept from rich artists in Europe or in America sit on their gold. It's much more than that. It's the future of music, the future of expression, the future of cinema, the future of literature, of news, of everything. And also the fact that if you think that intellectual property is not linked to our world, but what about, for instance, and think about 1 minute about patterns created by Maoris or Aborigines and stolen by the fashion business or advertising business. Something should be given back to those countries, really needing it. And it proves through what I'm saying that intellectual property should not be limited in time. Whatever happens in terms of support, whatever happens in the future, if we are cutting our music on a vinyl, on an MP3 files, on something coming from Mars, what has to be respected is what's going on between the blank page and what you have done on this blank page, whoever you are, a musician, a filmmaker, a writer, whatever. And I think it's time to think that when I wrote Oxygen 30 years ago, we were not that many to be involved in ecology and environment. And lots of politicians, all politicians, were thinking that we were just a bunch of crazies and neo-hippies and dreamers. And then, step by step, it has been in the consciousness of everyone these days that, even if we are not really politically correct on a day-to-day basis vis-à-vis the planet, we all over the world, we know that we have to take care of that. It should be the same. The artistic world these days is like the Amazonian forest. And this is the future of our identity. Culture, music, cinema is the identity of our societies and of our countries. If you don't respect this, if you don't create the economy adapted to our life, what's going to happen in our visual and audio environment in the next decades will be just a big white noise. And it's just what I'm trying to help and if I can contribute to improve the situation.
And companies like Google, where they're kind of leading the world into a scenario where the consumer and the creators, they're trying to position them as almost the same thing. How do you feel about that? You were talking yesterday about this particularly.
If you take Google, as I said, they grew up so fast that they even didn't realize that the damages they caused, and they think that they would be the good, progressive, and modern guys, and having a vision for the future where artists and producers would be just people who are scared and going and being old school and all this. And I think it's, you know, I've been really fascinated by how Google in my own country acted the past few weeks, and also in the UK it was the same. They had a big issue, a financial issue, and then they started by giving actually a tiny amount of money to get rid of all problems in France. To say, okay,
regarding the taxes, right?
The taxes, yeah. And then, okay, we're going to give 60 million euros, which is not obviously ridiculous if you compare to what Google is getting from our countries, just to help basically the press and to save the national press and maybe to Googleize the national press a little more. And it made me think that, and then the president of France was seated by, close to the president of Google. It made me think to Cortés facing the Aztecs. You know, it's like the French president very happy, like the chief of the Aztecs, and Cortés coming with cheap alcohol and cheap jewelry just to buy the country. I mean, it's something that we should really think of, and saying that the good guys are not necessarily on the precise side of the economy these days, and that we have to get back to where we are and where we belong, the pirate world. I'm not talking about piracy, but we must, I mean, you know, the music industry started by creating pirate radios, and the big mistake of the music industry that they wanted 25 years later to put pirates in jail. And that is something that we must go back to where we belong. We belong to the wild side of life.
Have you fallen out of love with Paris and France as a country?
Yeah, but you know, the name of my mother is France, and she was a big figure in the French resistance during the war. So obviously, I'm very attached to my country. But I for a long time, through my music and through what I'm doing, I'm more feeling kind of, I don't like the word, but citizen of the world or something like that. I love England. The mother of my kids is British. I mean, some of my kids are living in London. Also, my father used to live in America for a long time. I have also personal link with China and the east side of the world for a long time. So, frankly, and I'm not particularly impressed by what my country is doing at the moment. So I would say that it's a love and hate relationship, like family.
Yeah. Well, I think London is very, very happy to have you, and I know you've got plans for Silicon Roundabout and a few big ambitions for what you might want to do in London that's been talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm staying in France, and I'm a French citizen, and I respect that. But I'm working for a long time in America, in the UK, in Germany, and I love Berlin also. I'm working a lot over there as well. And we discussed with London about the idea of developing the tech city, the east side of London. They want to develop the kind of European Silicon Valley, if you want to put it, but more arty, and they would like to attract some artists to create more studios, or more not only on the financial point of view, but mainly also in the artistic point of view, which I respect. And they propose me to think about what could be a kind of Jarre Academy of Electronic Music and music. And I think that there is a big need for music these days to be taught in a different way. I mean, with the new tools we know, and also the way that collective approach of education for music. I mean, with the web and with the internet. I mean, having, for instance, you know, it was great in today's the discussions we have together. It's not a discussion; it's a monologue, more basically so far. But actually, could be received by basically anywhere in the world, and that is beyond my presence here today and yours. it's great that with technology you can share ideas, share knowledge, share legacy, and it's what I would like probably also to create in London or so in some other places, or contribute to create.
And new music, I heard there's a couple of contemporary artists you've been working with or remixing. There's new music to come from you?
Actually, you know, it's I think more and more, I think an electronic music basically is about sharing and giving and receiving, and I'm really more and more involved by sharing experiences. I mean, learning from people, and also people could be inspired. I mean, I know that lots of people are inspired by my work. It's the same also for on my side, and I'm working at the moment on different projects, but one of the projects is a real kind of more than collaboration album, but something that where we could merge DNAs with people from different generations and different countries, but a real pure electronic music project, but again mixing different styles, and where I could, but I'm, you know, at the same time I think it's great to share, but when you have a project, you have to keep the control. I'm not a big believer in a kind of collective creation. I mean, even if you can work together, at one stage, you need a conductor, and it's very important to keep this in mind. And but I'm really excited by the way I've been through difficult time in my life recently. I mean, for 4 or 5 years I've been a bit tough on personal level, and I'm really glad to be back myself. And,
good to have you back yourself.
Thank you very much.
I'm not going to talk about divorce. We promised we wouldn't. Yeah.
I would have loved.
We don't have enough time.
That could be another panel. I have things to say also on that level.
That's why I brought it up right at the end. Thank you very much. I'm going to open this to the floor because I think people would love to ask you some questions. So Ted Cohen is going to lead the way.
Thank you, Ted. Jean-Michel,
yeah.
Bienvenue.
Can you just say who you are?
Thank you.
Say what?
Introduce yourself.
Yeah. John Truelove Music. One of the hats I wear is as a board member of the Music Publishers Association, and we're looking forward to having you do a keynote at our board in a couple of weeks, isn't it? And congratulations on becoming president of CSAC as well. What my question was actually more on the creative side. Back to the 80s, I remember seeing the Houston show on TV and being absolutely blown away. Can you talk more about what went into creating that show with the technology of the 80s? I mean, even now it would be an ambitious enterprise, but I can't even imagine what would have gone into putting that together in, was it 88?
Yes, I think, yeah, 87, I think, yes. And it was quite challenging in sense that the technology obviously in the 80s was nothing to be compared with these days. But in a sense, the idea of having really very simple, as we know, simple tools can be also an advantage. And I was not probably specifically, to tell you the truth, excited by Texas. And when it was the guy in charge of music of the city who was keeping and asking me to go to Houston, said, for me as a European, I mean, I was really excited by California and New York, but why Houston, Texas? And then I went there, and I've been so impressed by the skyline of Houston, and I got this idea that taking the skyline as the backdrop for the concert, and I said it's going to be quite crazy, but you know, Texas likes thinking big, and it was also the 25th anniversary of NASA, and for the first time NASA was involved in a cultural event, and then we decided to. So I met the astronauts, I met all these crazy guys, and it was like a dream. And then we really conceived something quite crazy by, using technology at that time, with the help of technology of NASA, helping me to conceive this. And also, the plan was to create a link with space. And one of the astronauts was in a very 2001 type of trip to play live in space during the concert. And then I met with the astronaut, and then we tried to approach Yamaha, and they were not interested to put a synthesizer. I never understood why on space. It would have been quite a good publicity for them. And then one astronaut was a sax player, so I wrote a piece for saxophone, and he was training during NASA, putting all cameras in the shuttle to film the whole thing. And then 2 weeks before the concert, he said, "Okay, we are going to take off this afternoon, so watch me on TV, and we play and see you next week and on stage." And it was Challenger, and the shuttle exploded, as we know, and big tragedy. And we were all crying. I wanted to cancel the whole thing, and then some of the astronauts in Houston told me, I mean, you should do it as a tribute to the astronauts and to NASA, and to know that you have human beings behind machines, as in our lives, and it became a unique event, more than it's still in the Guinness Book of Records for the biggest concert ever done in the States, and it's absolutely emotional moment. Even when I'm thinking of it today, I mean, it has been really something so special, and I learned a lot from Texas and from these people. I mean, they've been really great, and I remember that nobody knew what it was, but President Reagan said at that time that Ron, because the astronaut was Ron McNair, Ron will never forget your saxophone, and he was actually underlining that about that project that he was supposed to play saxophone in space. So it was, but you know, all these concerts I've done, I mean, are linked to such extreme and extraordinary stories that I think I'll write a book one day. But because every concert I've done is when you are in those kind of situations where you have so many different people, when you have people, I mean, doing graffitis on walls, and rappers, I mean, sitting backstage with the police, and you have opera singers with heavy metal guys, and you know, it's such a kind of happening that actually what's going on also backstage is almost as exciting that's going on as a result.
I'd love to know more about that. More about your backstage stories. Yeah. One day. Yeah. Next year. Mark Jones has always got some good questions.
Hello. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can't hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Mark Jones from Wall of Sound, Back to the Future. Just want to say thank you for everything you've done to push the barriers and boundaries for all of us onwards, and this panel has been absolutely fantastic. I have to start with, I have a couple of questions. I have three, I'll try and be quick. I have three very, very nerdy questions from some synthesizer legends who wanted to ask you some questions. The first one is Martin Ware from the Human League, British Electric Foundation, Heaven 17. How many analog synths do you own?
Frankly, I don't know quite a lot.
Give him a number.
More than 5.
Okay, more than 5. Okay.
Less than.
Andy McCluskey from Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. This is a bit of a long one, sorry. I read in an online piece that your favorite synths were VC-S3 and the big ARPs. How the hell are you patient enough to learn how they work? We had a VSC3 and couldn't get a sound out of it that we could ever repeat. That is why we stuck with simple Korgs and Rolands that started to be available at affordable prices in the late 70s. Therefore, do you feel that your definitive sound is influenced by your early mastery of the more complex electronic keyboards as much as the conscious choice of instrument or sound palette?
They did have one of the longest names in history.
My answer will be much shorter. First of all, I'm a big fan of OMD, and actually, what I enjoy with them is actually their name is as long as your question. Orchestral maneuvers in the dark.
It wasn't my question.
Like,
it wasn't my question. It was his.
No, I know. And his question. And actually, it's fun because I saw them at the Run House in London 2 weeks ago.
I was I DJ.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's true. That's true. Actually, but you had no caps and a kind of funny shirt.
Okay.
I enjoyed it very much.
Right.
And actually, just to answer to that, I mean, my answer will be very quick. I mean, the VCS3 is the first European synthesizers ever built from crazy British guys, and actually I had no other choice to work with this one because it was the only one I got. This is the answer.
Fantastic. And one more from Daniel Miller of Mute Records. What was your first synth and why?
My first stint? The VCS3. I mean,
there you go. Perfect.
That's right.
And I'd like to ask a couple of questions personally, if that's okay.
Yes, 5 then.
Sorry, I know, but this is sorry. Okay. How many dimensions do you hear, see, and feel music in? Because it's not 3D, it's not 5D. You seem to. Thank you.
I'm actually, as I said before, I was talking about 3D and 4D. I think that what's great with electronic music is it's probably one of the only art form where you can leave the audience to create their own movies in their mind. It's the reason why that an advice for beginners is don't be obsessed by trying to tell a story. I think what really created a big problem for musicians is, ironically, MTV. Because MTV saved the business for a while, but at the same time, we put a lot of craps, visual craps, on songs, on beautiful songs most of the time. Even if you had brilliant videos, obviously we all know that. But actually, to artificially putting some images on music is very dangerous. And because you are, I mean, your feeling about the music will be different from mine. And I want to create my own movie, and this is electronic music is probably the most interactive art form because it lets the audience to create their own stories, their own movie in their mind. Okay.
Last question.
If there was, I've got 2 more. Quick, I'll be really quick.
One more.
One more.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. The one more then is: did you know, or did you know what the term EDM meant before you came to IMS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. One more question. We're going to have to move on.
Marco Giovanni, DJ and producer. Sorry, all right. Okay, can you hear me, yeah? Marco Giovanni, hi, nice to meet you. If you was 18 years old again, would you be making trance like Ferry Corsten, or would you be making house music? What would you be making?
Trance.
You'd be making trance? That's what I figured. That's exactly what I figured. Thank you.
And you know, I shouldn't say that too loud in France because trance is probably the only genre that is not respected in France. I mean, but when I say trance, I mean it's beyond this. But I think that, as I said very quickly before, I think which is interesting today is to mix genres and not belonging necessarily to one sector or one ghetto, which is great these days. Is actually you can take a little bit of this, a little bit of that to create your own style.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there, I'm afraid, but Jean-Michel Jarre, absolute legend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.